You are watching Film Lovers Are Sick People. My name is Zachary. Let's talk about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Part 3. Part 3 is a tsunami of wild, beautiful creativity. It's a Pygmalion spell of glamour. Season 3 teaches that every queen must be ready for battlement, and every girl must prepare for war. We're presented with a godless coven, a godless people. It's been proven that Lucifer is a false god, unworthy of commanding such a brilliantly diverse and truly valuable flock. He is unworthy of authority over this coven that we've grown to fall in love with, that we've grown to imagine ourselves a part of. So it's a godless people searching for divinity. It's also a bit of a metaphor for imperialism, because the primary antagonists of Part 3 are the paganists. Essentially, an invading force cuts them off from their resources, so from their magical abilities, and from their dignity, from their agency, from their culture. Since they can't perform magic, since they can't really express themselves in the supernal ways that, and even celestial ways that they are prone to, that they are most comfortable doing. It's very much a metaphor for a kind of brutally fascist imperialism. These pagans want to exploit their most virginal components, their most innocent character types, their most naive. They quite literally want to sacrifice their most innocent virgins. So it's about exploiting that naivety. It's about a bit of the old spiritual genocide. And all through these analyses of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I haven't mentioned any sort of spirituality because I haven't really been compelled to do so in the other seasons, because I think it's more absurdist. I do love that in Part 3 we are getting, we see the death of the patriarchy, and we are getting the birth of a monarchy. And we shall see all of the consequences that come from that. You do get political responses from me with my analysis videos concerning Roberto Aguirre Sacasa's work, be it Riverdale or Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Because spirituality, although this show seems to deal with it quite heavily, even exclusively at moments, I do believe that it has a postmodern and ironic edge, not a nihilistic one, not at all. This is kind of like postmodern nihilism. It has a postmodern irony when dealing with satanic imagery. Now, I love the satanic imagery in it, and of course there's a lot of metaphorical value. Witches have always been symbolic of feminist heroes, of feminist icons, of womanhood. And Satan has often also been attributed to that sort of, to a certain feminine, chaotic, kind of biblical understanding of female nature. Since, at least in the Old Testament, the god there is seen as the ultimate patriarch, as a patriarchal figure. His opposite, Lucifer, would have to be seen, not would have to be, is kind of just positioned that way. That there's authority and then there's freedom. And in the Bible, it seems authority comes from God and freedom comes from the devil, comes from Satan. At least that's the dichotomy that is traditionally presented there. And you can't have the absolute necessities of both. Or if you do entertain yourself with a kind of satanic freedom, then you will be punished eternally unless you ask for forgiveness from your father, from the father figure, from the omnipotent father figure that is the Old Testament God. Yet in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, obviously it turns it on its head. The witches are still very much so feminist icons, feminist metaphors, feminist symbols of empowerment, of overcoming adversity, of defeating patriarchal adversaries, the witches are still very much intact, and I think improved and redesigned for our new millennium, as it could only be under the Trump era, under one of our most misogynist presidents ever. That this could only exist under that kind of misogyny, given the highest platform that is possible to give someone in our country, possibly the world. Misogyny is becoming accepted. Misogyny has become the norm in our lived-in world. So, of course, a show like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina would respond to that in kind and really give us not exactly a revenge fantasy, but definitely a piece of art that's about overcoming the adversary. And if you get down to it, what Satan actually means, what the word itself means, is aggressor. And what aggressor means to the analysis of this show, the aggressor is basically every example of patriarchy. It's infringing. It is not just infringing, it is violently imposing its masculine will and dominance, control and authority and security, false security, over the women in the coven. And one false idol by one false idol, they destroy all idols of patriarchy, and now we are with a true monarchy, not only of hell, but the witch's coven on earth is also a matriarchy run by women, and I think that's wonderful. I don't go too much into spiritualism because I feel that kind of avoids the point. It kind of avoids the reasons that you would talk about Sabrina. I have sympathies to mysticism. I think we all probably go through some sort of mysticism phase, maybe even some sort of rebellious satanic phase in our youth. If you were like me and you grew up kind of like in a punk or goth scene, of course you experimented with Anton LaVey or with Crowley, with Satanist literature. But I feel like that's really not the point of this television show. Roberto Aguirre Sacasa is definitely trying to show us how to destroy fascist patriarchies, how to do away with the security that these kinds of false leaders seem to provide you with. Security is synonymous with fascism, and it's possibly its only charitable descriptive word that you can associate with it. We have to do ourselves away with it. We are our own security. So it's quite anarchist. It's quite an anarchist show as well. But it's really not focused on true spirituality, which is good. Speaking as an atheist, and as someone who was brought up Jewish, who didn't really believe in too many supernatural things to begin with, or divine punishments to begin with, that's never been a certain language that has really communicated with me at all. And I definitely do not believe that a program, a piece of media that deals with celestial archetypes or divine figures or ideas like that, I don't think that it has to honestly entertain those notions, because it offers validity. I'm sorry, but religion is not valid. Religion is absurd. And Chilling Adventures of Sabrina sees it as a modern-day absurdity. Like, it's beyond absurd. Postmodernism has been the trend in popular art since the late 80s. Okay? We've been godless, we've been without ideology for a long time, and we've been fine. The Christian God is no longer a valid concept to talk about in popular art, especially not in teen soaps. And that is what Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is. It would be disingenuous to even entertain the notion with any shred of integrity, because I don't believe that religion deserves integrity. It doesn't. That's why this is a very kind of extremely political and emotional show. Religion, spirituality, that convolutes any sort of actual anti-fascist messaging, which is something Roberto Aguirre Sacasa never does. He never overcomplicates his language in this show. It's anti-fascist. The satanic imagery, that's rock and roll. That's awesome theatrics. That is brilliantly, that's brilliantly theatrical. And I love seeing it. It gets me off. I love seeing all the satanic imagery because it excites me cinematically. Absolutely. And it does add a certain amount of ironic and even dreadfully gothic gravitas, weight to the show itself, to the backdrops of it. It becomes even more opulent and operatic, which is wonderful. I'm extremely thankful that the show doesn't get bogged down in theological discussions. The theological discussion is dead. It's a moot point. Get over it. Welcome to the New World. It's been around for a long time. If you're just arriving here now, that is on you and your philosophical immaturity, not on this show. God has been dead for a long time, and good fucking riddance. This is the new epoch, and it's a feminine epoch. All hail the monarchy. So I love this television show. I thought part 3 was excellent. And Sabrina gets better and better as a heroic figure. I could liken her to people like Buffy or River Tam or Veronica Mars. There's something that is just, Jean Grey. Even. There's something that's remarkably inspiring about her. And she's very funny on this in this part as well. Perhaps Roberto Aguirre Sacasa was nudged into making the show a little bit more like Riverdale or Glee, which kind of speaks to his past as an auteur kind of showrunner and director and writer, because we do get a few more musical numbers. Things are a bit more deliberately kitsch in the new queer cinema aesthetic, so it's still completely truthful to the work itself, except in part 3 we'd also get, apart from notions of new queer cinema aesthetics, apart from kind of a postmodern kitsch, we have elements of body horror, and also elements of Fellini Satyricon. The character Prince Caliban looks like he's been directly lifted from Fellini Satyricon, and I mean that in the best possible way. Fellini Satyricon is a film without any value judgments or without a psychology. And it's interesting seeing a character like that implanted here. I mean, he also looks like that. He looks like a gay wet dream. Kind of alien, because he doesn't seem of our time. He seems like he belongs in the time of the Romans. And Prince Caliban is a wonderful new queer inclusion here. And I really appreciated his inclusion. It reminded me a lot of Fellini Satyricon, and that's a great thing to remind me of. I really like part 3. I think part 3 is excellent. Prudence continues in her faith arc, and the way it ends is certainly hints at an even greater realization for faith, for the faith archetype that she is most certainly modeled after. She's modeled after Faith from Buffy, I'm certain of it, and I can't wait to see what she has in store. Nicholas has a very interesting story this time around. He's dealing with PTSD. It's heavily implied that while he had Lucifer inside of him, well, I mean, that's the point. I'm not even going to go into the superficial surface of the metaphor. What happened was Lucifer sexually assaulted him. Lucifer raped him. Lucifer was inside of him and left his traces all over him. And the only way that Nicholas can... this happened during... Lucifer was imprisoned inside of Nicholas like an Achernon. Like an Achernon puzzle. Like he was holding him inside of himself, but in his head he was constantly without sleep, warring and wrestling with Lucifer. But it's very heavily metaphorically implied that he was also sexually assaulted and raped by Lucifer in there. Of course, that would have to be the case. And when Nicholas is when they are separated, when Nicholas is freed from Lucifer's clutches, he goes out to experiment in a BDSM, in very violent sex. He's trying to punish himself. He's trying to punish himself because he feels worthless, and he hates Sabrina because Sabrina was not worth being raped for what felt like an eternity. Of course she wasn't worth that. Of course, you can't blame Nicholas for that, for the way he screamed at her in the forest. Because he's absolutely right. No one is worth being that dehumanized. Nicholas had a remarkable and a remarkably complex and sophisticated arc to play out here, and it's one of abuse, and it's one where he doesn't really get better. It's left very ambiguous, and I hope he gets better. But I hope that could be an impossibility. But I think they handled male rape extremely well. It's kind of heartbreaking in a lot of ways, seeing how Nicholas was made into a shell of himself, lashing out on everyone around him. And it's perfectly understandable to me, most certainly, and the way that Lucifer relished the torment. I mean, Nicholas went to drug addiction, heavy drug use, tried to kill himself, went into put himself into dangerous positions deliberately. Experimented with wildly violent sex and loved being punished and humiliated by the people around him because he didn't want to exist, or he only felt like he actually existed when he was causing a lot of pain and feeling a lot of pain as a result of causing it. It's quite a twisted arc our Nicholas Scratch went through this season. It's quite an incredible part 3, season 3, however you want to refer to this season. I do think it is the weakest, and that's only because the first 2 parts were wildly excellent, were kind of pitch perfect. Here, at least they make good on exactly what that blurry kind of aesthetic, when there's something in focus in the center and the borders surrounding them are blurry, that makes good on exactly what it means. It means that there's a, that whole that our physical reality is being pulled and torn and made unreal by the thing that's in the center, by the person that's in the center, casting an incantation or a spell or some sort of charm, something, and it's kind of pulling the physical world around it. And of course, you can lift that in a postmodern sense and say that that this show itself is blending irony and kitsch with deathly serious materials until it kind of blurs together into one. So by part 3, we understand what that means, and I think that kind of aesthetic, that stylistic choice is just as important as the slow motion was for Riverdale. Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa is a very deliberate auteur, and it's very important to understand what he's trying to say in visual terms with his visual filmic grammar. It's very rewarding when you can figure it out, and we figured it out by part 3. They make it very clear in the final episode. I think it's a great season. The first 2 parts are kind of pitch perfect in a lot of ways. I love part 3 still. It's such a great season, and most of it is extremely masterful. So just because I say it's the weakest, it doesn't mean it is weak in the slightest. It's an extremely strong and powerful 8 episodes of television. It's wonderful cinema. I love Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Sabrina, yeah, you can put me on record. She's one of my fictive heroes now. I mean, I've been convinced over 3 parts. I am completely convinced that Sabrina Spellman, Sabrina Morningstar, Sabrina is definitely a girl worth looking up to in a lot of different ways. And I feel her inspiring me. And that's possibly the most remarkable thing that this show could have ever accomplished.